Smaller portions, bigger bills, missing staff, shop closures. Feel familiar? And it's not just inflation that's to blame, but a financial ownership model that has come to dominate British brands and services in the last few years.
Private equity.
In 1980, there were only 28 private equity firms in operation. In recent years, that number has swelled to more than 9,200, to the point where these firms now manage close to $7 trillion. It's possible that from the moment you wake up in the morning to the very end of your day, you could have been interacting with private equity simply by using some of your favourite brands, with no idea that they've been bought out and rebuilt around one goal: extracting as much money as possible as quickly as possible. But what exactly is private equity? Why is it having such an impact? How is it allowed to exist? And is it really delivering the returns that it claims it is on pensions and universities? Private equity in and of itself isn't a bad thing. For example, if I have enough money, I could invest in or buy a private business. That's different to investing in a company on the stock market. Any company listed there falls under public equity. The problems that have arisen around the private equity industry are largely because of the way it structures purchases and the reasons they buy brands in the first place. Let's say the business I chose to buy cost me £500,000. I put in £100,000 of my own money and borrow the rest from the bank. I would then be liable for the repayment of that loan. But this is the first point where the private equity world differs from the normal world. When a private equity firm buys a business, they put in the smallest amount and borrow the rest, from the bank as well as from investors. But unlike me, the private equity firm isn't responsible for repaying that loan. The business it bought is, because the loan is in its name. And you can see how this might change how the business operates immediately. Because once a company is carrying massive repayments, everything becomes secondary to servicing that debt. Staffing, maintenance, product quality, customer service, anything that doesn't help cash flow right now becomes under threat. This has happened time and time again. Remember Toys R Us? After a PE buyout, the company was paying $400 million a year just to service the debt. So now your favourite brand has gone from a business that cared about you, your pet, your elderly relative, to just an asset that can be stripped and squeezed for money. So once the PE firm has bought the business and distanced itself from the highest percentage of risk, it sets about making money. The first way is through fees, simply charging the company for managing it. Yeah. And the second way PE firms often make money is through something called sale-leasebacks, which is when the PE firm sells off the company's valuable properties, usually to another arm of their own business, and then it leases the same building back to itself, meaning your favourite brand now has a permanent rent bill for locations it used to own. It gets crazier still. A third way, which is controversial, is something called dividend recapitalisation, which is when the company takes out another loan, not to invest in the business, but to pay a dividend to the owners. In other words, it borrows money so that the private equity firms can get cash out of the business early, rather than simply waiting until it can be sold for profit. And remember, like before, the loan is in the name of the company, not the PE firm, which saddles your favourite brand with even more debt. And the final way is when the PE firm sells the business, usually after around 5 to 7 years, and it takes a share of the profits, with the rest of the profits going to investors. With such large amounts of money going out of the business to service debt, it's no wonder we all start seeing brands suddenly failing. Even when things look fine on the surface, they can still be busy, popular, culturally iconic. Underneath, the interest payments, rent payments, fees, and short-term targets take their toll. And this is often when inflation becomes a convenient cover story. Because when companies finally buckle, the narrative gets framed as consumers are cutting back, costs went up, or inflation hit them. But the reality is, private equity creates vulnerability for companies because the model depends on debt, and debt depends on interest rates. When interest rates go down, like they did post-Brexit and during the pandemic, then UK businesses look cheap compared to the US ones, which is partly why there are so many UK PE-owned firms these days. But when interest rates go up, like they have in recent years, Debt-laden private equity companies don't just face higher costs, they face a structural threat. They can't ride out a bad year the way a healthier business can, because a large chunk of their monthly budget is swallowed up by interest. Take the purchase of Morrisons, which involved billions in debt. When borrowing got more expensive, they had less room to compete on prices. The only way they could respond was through asset sales and restructures. And as a result, it lost its position as the UK's fourth largest supermarket to discount rival Aldi. Now, private equity firms will tell you they're the good guys, that they professionalise businesses, bring expertise and create jobs, and crucially, that they deliver returns for pension funds, university endowments and long-term savers. But more and more, private equity's reputation of delivering higher returns than stocks is also being questioned. The uncomfortable truth is that private equity isn't a niche villain. It's a major pillar in the modern economy, showing up in retail, restaurants, veterinary services, and most controversially, healthcare, where cost-cutting can translate into real harm. So the next time that a brand you love starts to feel a bit off, don't just ask what happened to the prices. Ask a different question. Did the business change, or did its incentives change?